to Directorpiece Theatre, and now here's two demons who torment me endlessly.
Those were the two best slates I've ever done.
Oh, it's funny because you're like super late, but that's fine. That's always true.
They were just really on the money. I don't know if that's a good or a bad omen.
Hey, we're getting good at podcasting, brother.
If slates are any indication, this is going to be A+ content. What are you doing on this Hallows Eve? Are you at least spooky? Are you at least dressed in something for this conversation or no?
Yeah, I'm completely naked.
Oh, great! That's what I was hoping.
You don't podcast naked?
Usually not. Usually I cover my genitals with shame.
No. See, but I did do something spooky. I put little wings on my dick, like bat wings. You know, it's a bat.
I can picture it now.
Yep.
Sadly, I can picture it now.
Happy Halloween! Although
Happy
we're recording
Halloween.
on Halloween, but it's not. It's trick or treat. It's not Halloween right now when you're listening to this.
I'm going to tell you what scares the shit out of me, though, just on the theme. What scares the shit out of me is some kid knocking at my door and me having absolutely no plan for what to give that child today.
I don't answer the door.
No plan at all. Yeah,
no, I don't. I've lived in the place that I live for 6 years, and not once has a child been near me.
Do you think they think it's haunted?
No, I just think that they know that there's no good candy to be had.
That's fair. But I kind of enjoy the idea that they think of Old Man Epperson like some kind of Scooby-Doo villain.
Oh yeah,
right?
Yeah, I'm definitely. I mean, it's like apartment, so it's not as cool. But I'm definitely the house on the edge of the street that no one talks to. I only come outside to like put my trash out.
Put your wings on your dick,
snarl,
right?
I snarl at everyone and go, and they all go like, "Don't mess around with Old Man Epperson there."
He's got wings on his dick. That's the rumor.
And then they TP my house, and I go postal.
Postal. Wow. Yeah. I really enjoy that. I mean, I'm new to my complex, so I'm not allowed to be eccentric yet, but I'm working my way up to it.
Oh, I'm feeling my complexes, baby. I'm just a part of me, free flowing.
You're like a growth on that complex now. You've been there for years and years.
Yeah, I'm a complex guru, one could say.
You're the one they send to for orientation.
Yeah.
Over here, that's the trash can.
That's orientation? Jesus.
Yeah, a little flyer. Yeah, that over there, that's parking.
We're 3 minutes in.
Yeah, well, this is worthwhile content. There's no reason why we should cut this.
No reason at all.
Welcome to Directorpiece Theater. Welcome. This is how we're spending our Hallows Eve, our spooky time.
The Halloween, as they say.
You have a Halloween, that's for sure. Yeah. I'm one of your hosts, Adam Ganser, and with me is the bat-winged penis man himself.
Abe Epperson. The crowd goes wild.
I think I liked your bit better than you liked it. I think I was really into that bit.
Hey, that's good.
I did like it. And so transitioning, sadly, from the scary topics into, I guess, a slightly more conventional topic, I wanted to talk about a movie that Abe and I saw for the first time together.
Can you believe it? We've been friends since 2011.
There's only like 5 movies I think we both have seen together for the first time, right? There's not that many of those.
This is the only one I can name, really.
Well, we watched a couple Edgar Wrights together, I think. I mean, I know we watched the Avengers together for the first time, didn't we? Did we all go in a group for that?
You're probably right about that, yeah. Yeah, I think you are.
But this is one, so we did not watch this at a theater. We watched this, and I want everyone to appreciate this moment. This is 2011. We watched this at a film school party with just some of the old USC alum hanging out watching this classic of classic of the genre. I don't know.
I don't know. So many cheeses, so many wines, as you'd expect from a USC graduate program party.
Was this at Coxey's house? I think it was, right?
Yes.
It was at Coxey's house. Yeah. I remember that, and there was a couple of chatterboxes. Not naming any names, but there was a few chatterboxes.
People like to talk about film in film school, and when you watch a film, they forget that it's a watching time.
Yeah, I was really trying to figure out what the line was for me to be like, bro, we're watching a fucking movie. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't want to be that guy, but I also needed it a little bit.
It's to be honest, it's a fool's errand, the whole concept of watching a movie seriously at a party. But leave it to film students to try to do it.
I will
a bunch of idiots.
That's accurate. I will say, I think Maggie has figured out how to watch a funny movie at a party, and it works.
Oh, for sure. There's ways to do it.
But I've never had a party where we watched a real movie that wasn't like at a theater, and it was good. It was always like, I'd rather be doing the party part of this. Yeah. You know,
exactly.
Anyway, so we had I think we agree, not the best beginning with this movie. And the movie, for those of you who clicked with this without reading the title, is Drive. Nicolas Refn's Drive. Abe, you love this movie, right?
I remember at one point specifically in the party, because I was trying to follow it. I was trying to give it its credit. I was trying to watch it. As you said, it wasn't the ideal area, but time and place to do it. But I remember turning to you and going like, is this movie supposed to be good? I do remember that.
But just for everyone's information, it was not played like a dummy. It was definitely played like, I did
not like this movie.
I hate this movie.
I still don't.
Yeah, I know you don't like it, which is great. That's perfectly acceptable.
It's fine.
Well, okay. So thank you for saying that, because in film school, and again, I can't say what it was like in the real world in the late aughts, early teens, but this movie was worshipped? ? Right? People were there was all kinds of fluids flying out of people's bodies in enthusiasm for this movie.
I remember one teacher talking about the cinematography, which I do. They're right. The cinematography's good, but I'm just like, but you're just like shooting fish in a barrel. Of course, it's gonna look good. Look at who you have on screen. I don't know. It's just like doesn't mean it's a good movie.
Ryan Gosling comes with lights.
Exactly.
You know, what's
look
that?
at these faces. Look at these setups. Look at these lights. All these cars. It's very, very cool.
Yeah. Well, right, and I think that's really it. Right, is that it was like it was one of the more recent examples of a movie that had so much style and was so good at style that people confused it for substance.
And that just ain't me.
Right? People confuse it for substance. Right. That's not you. Yeah, you are exactly the opposite of that, which is a thing I love about you. I'm a little closer on the spectrum to this than you are, certainly, right? Like, I don't know where I land on the spectrum in general, but I'm closer to style over substance than you are, I would think, right? Yeah, probably. Okay, well, the argument today I want to talk about is, how does a good director fix a bad screenplay? And we're going to talk about that in the context of Drive. So the first thing we have to say, and I think everyone is going to have to get on board with this supposition one way or the other, is Drive's screenplay is pretty mediocre, right? I would call that a not great screenplay.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that? Do you feel like that's controversial?
One of my favorite moments is when Gosling Driver is in a hotel room and he says, "You won't be able to contact me on this phone again." And then he throws the phone on the hotel bed and just walks out. Like it's like, all right, cool, man. So that person's gonna call that phone and you're just not gonna pick up. Like that's what it means.
Right. It's not a magic phone, so you're just leaving it somewhere. Got it.
I don't know. It's stuff like that. Cool. It's very cool. It's like a cool guy's. The script is a cool guy's version of being cool, which is cool. It's like a jacket with a scorpion on it, you know?
Oh, I love it. I love it. You're sticking your bat wing dick right in this argument right away. I like it.
It's true, though.
Yeah.
It's a bad script.
I mean, it's definitely trying to be cool. I think the thing that's interesting about it is that given its lack of substance, it succeeded. with at least some audiences, right? Like there was a lot of people who watched the film and thought it was super cool. And when you step back from this is like a B movie, right? This is a B movie about a superhero driver. That's what it is.
That's absolutely right.
So it's right. It's not like it's not the cool slick heist film that was produced by Hollywood at all. It's the dumb movie that would normally be on after midnight, except for this director is an interesting director, and so because of that, it got some indie cred, and also it has Ryan Gosling.
I'm glad you brought that distinction, because it is that, but it's also like it does get cool points because there are sequences that are legitimately cool looking.
Absolutely, 100%. So so I just want to introduce the topic of like screenplay versus director. Just do some general introduction to it because I feel like I want to address people where I believe they are, right? So the first question, and I think it's like the core question for all movie audiences, is which one is more important, the screenplay or the director, to the finished product, right? I think that question is kind of, everybody has that question, right? And it's a question that you see debated amongst critics, and I think as an average moviegoer, it's sometimes hard to tell where the screenplay ends and the director begins. And in my experience, I don't know about yours, but in my experience, the answer to that is mostly dependent on what position the person answering it occupies in the business, right? Like, that's what I found. Like, for instance, at Cracked, because it was mostly writers, I don't think that they would say the director was more important to a feature than a screenplay. Do you?
I mean,
you think they would say that?
I don't know. I think it depends on the film, right?
Some films it's more evident than others, which is why I picked this one, because I would say this is one of the clearer cases where the director is more important. So yes, of course, it's case by case. I just think that what I'm really getting at is there's no clear answer to that. And also I think people need to understand that question is sort of different depending on which area of the business you go into. So in television, for instance, there's really no question that the writers have a more substantial role in shaping the finished product than directors do, because the writers, they write for a show for the entire season and maybe the entire series if they're really good and lucky. And a director is a hired gun. They're going to come on for an episode, if they do well, several episodes, but that's it.
They kind of do surgery.
Right? I mean,
like first do no harm, is their kind of approach.
Right. Correct. They're not going to shape the narrative as much. Sometimes even when a show's really successful, you start seeing people making their directorial debuts.
Yep.
Who are cast members or writers. That's how much less significant the directing role is in television. Is they're giving it to like, I guess, they want to get a shot at directing. Sure, let them try it. Whereas that is not going to happen in the feature game, I would argue. So feature films, the directors are much more the creative overseer, and it can really range, of course, as you were saying, Abe. But like sometimes the director has so much oversight that they're literally tearing the script up and making a new one at their whim. Right, that happens not infrequently. Right, Spielberg very famously for Jaws. They had the movie's based on a book, which was, I guess, a pretty successful book, and he basically rewrote a script that was mostly just scenes he wanted to see, and then like took that as the inspiration for the finished script that somebody else wrote, which to me suggests like, so like the first script was mostly meaningless to him.
Yeah, it was like a safari that he, or like a like all you can eat buffet. Yeah.
Right, it was a springboard, something to use for him to make the film he wants to make, and then he kind of cobbles it together. That's also a story I've heard about Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves from a more inside baseball.
It's definitely like a
I've
Kubrick
heard that story. So, well, I mean, obviously Kubrick, right? He's very famous for doing that. If you watch the behind the scenes of The Shining, which incidentally was made by his daughter, that's fascinating. Yeah. The first time we meet him, he's at a typewriter during the shoot, rewriting the script. Yeah. Like that's what he's doing. He's like, I guess we'll do this today. Yeah. Opening image, Kubrick, rewriting a script. So, now again, there's politics to this question, but do the directors always have final say on the contents of the script? No, it depends on their power relationships, right? Like, so if you're making a Jerry Bruckheimer film, I would guess you probably don't have final say on the script. I'm guessing Bruckheimer does. But if you're, I don't know, David Lynch or somebody like that, certainly Woody Allen or Spielberg or somebody of that caliber, Scorsese, they're going to get final say, right? They're going to make it. So it's like Final Cut. In a feature game, the director may or may not have final say. It just depends. So this leads me to the next question, and I actually want your opinion before I say my piece on it, Abe. Do you think a film can ever really surpass the strength of the script?
Yes.
Do you have like a good example of
The
that in your mind
assassination of
when I asked that
Jesse
question?
James by the coward Robert Ford.
Oh, great, Paul. Absolutely. That is a better film than script, for sure. For sure. I would argue Pulp Fiction's another one.
Yes.
And I think Pulp Fiction has a good script, but the film of it is better just because it's people doing it, I think, in part. Also because it's more edited. Okay, but I think we would agree that it's rare, though, right? Like a script, a script generally dictates the quality of the film for the most part. And part of the reason is because the script has often been shaped by the director's sensibility before they went into production. So, like, of course, it's not going to surpass that because it was shaped by the person who made the film, too. So, okay, so that leads us to Drive. Now, my argument here is that Drive actually manages to transcend the material of the script, and the director, Nicolas Refn, was instrumental in that happening. And I'm going to sort of argue the two different avenues through which he did that. One of them is sort of the behind-the-scenes piece about the script where he managed the script, and the other piece is the way that he made the film, the directing of the film, also is better than it looks on paper. Those are my two pieces. So, to start, let's talk about how Refn treated the script. One thing I was baffled by is that this script had been lying around for 6 years at Universal. Like, they've been trying to adapt a book that this is based on for 6 years, and they wanted to spend $60 million and cast Hugh Jackman in it and make this gigantic movie out of it. And I can't even imagine why.
I mean, he was...
Like, I can't even imagine what that would be,
Wolverine,
which is probably why it
baby.
didn't happen, right? Sure, no, of course. I understand why Hugh Jackman. I don't understand why... Yeah, what is that money spent on? Like, what,
Yeah, I'm trying to think of, like, I think because it's the 80s throwback, right? They want to catch the lightning in a bottle of, like, the, like, I don't know, like the Schwarzeneggers and the Stallones a little bit. There's a vibe of, like, Running Man, like it's, like it's that speed and that tone and that style.
You're making, like, a true action movie out of this. Like, that's your thought. It's like, let's make true action movie. They probably have more chase scenes in it, I'm guessing. Right? And they're doing real car stuff. Like, they're blowing up cars. They're like, so I haven't read the original script or the book, so I have no idea. But I'm guessing a lot of that got cut. I'm guessing that Refn was like, no, I don't want to do any of that.
That makes sense to me.
That's my guess. So here's what I do know for sure happened. What happened for sure is that Refn got a hold of it, right? And Refn was sort of an indie filmmaker. He'd made a film called Bronson, which is how we met Thomas Hardy. By the way, that's a movie.
Holy shit.
That's a movie. That's a fucking movie. It's interesting. I like it a lot, but it's a movie. And Refn mostly makes art house movies in general. Like, that's kind of what he does, like these weird, brooding art house films. So he gets a hold of it, and he's kind of the hot shit director of the moment. And he apparently had been, like, having a bunch of interviews or whatever to direct various things. And Ryan Gosling calls him up and is like, listen, I want to make a movie with you. And so, like, they're just, like, driving around in a car, right? Like, that's what they're doing.
What
Listening
if the
to music,
movie's just about,
driving
like,
around
cars,
in a car.
man?
That's
No.
That's what happened. Yes.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes, buddy. Yes. That is exactly what fucking happened. Like, I in an interview, he claims that maybe some drugs were involved, but, like, Refn and Gosling are just driving around listening to music. Refn's feeling really sad because he misses his wife. And he's like, man, this is the movie. Just what if we're just driving around, man? Like really
Fuck.
vibing, you know? And Gosling was like, yeah, I'm in, right? Now, let me explain why that's not complete horseshit, because boy, does it sound like
really
complete horseshit,
does.
right? Yeah, it really does. I know. And it strengthens your point of view, and I'm fine with that.
Go for it.
Here's what makes it great. The first thing is, in making that decision, Refn's like, I'm not going to make a studio picture. Okay, which is really important for the sensibility of this film. Because he didn't make it a studio picture, he was allowed to add more of a brooding, sort of cruising sense to it that I think is ultimately why we like it. So there's that, right? And as stupid as it is, the driving around with music is definitely how the movie feels, and it is why we like it.
It's long segments of this movie.
100%. So even though that's a stupid origin for it, that totally works. Now, the other thing that's kind of brilliant about this is that Refn, because he decided not to make a studio picture, he had to make it as an indie film. But because he made it as with Ryan Gosling, he basically had a sort of shield that gave him creative freedom. Right, so he was able to raise money on the back of Ryan Gosling because he was a known commodity, and because Gosling wanted to make the picture, Refn has more say creatively in what the picture ends up being. Right, so Gosling is this really key ingredient to let Refn do what he wants to do, and that's just like smart, right? That's a savvy move. You know, like you listen to Refn talk, and he definitely sounds like an art house maniac. But
that's two choices out of the gate that are right on. You know, like I'm doing an indie version of an action movie. I got Ryan Gosling. You're already killing it.
I mean, again, like most projects, you know, and I mean, we know this from personal experience, getting one off the ground is hard. Making it survive the process of getting all the way to production is extremely difficult. You know, like the class that Abe and I shared together where we started working, like where basically we worked together for the first time, was a class called 546 at USC. And the sneaky benefit of that class is it kind of teaches you not just how to make a film in a big crew, which is what it does, but also how your movie gets torn up by the process of development and executives and opinions and it's very hard to make a good film in that class, I think on purpose, because it teaches you how the business works. And Refn clearly shows, like, I know how to get around that, and I kind of admire that already.
I think any director who's worth, you know, anything is someone who fights for their ideas.
And also kind of knows what environment they can win that fight in. Right? Like, Refn's not going to win a studio fight. He's going to get eviscerated there, right? Because he's too weird and artsy. So taking it out of that system is just better for him. Okay, so here's the other benefit of Ryan Gosling, who, you know, ultimately Ryan Gosling in some ways is half of the reason why this is so good, aside from his acting, is that Ryan Gosling attracted like a legit cast.
Oh, for sure. This cast is insane.
Cast is really good. Yeah. And again, the budget on this movie, $16 million. $16 million.
Impressive.
So that's nothing. That's fucking nothing, right? Like, so Gosling apparently gets like Bryan Cranston and Albert Brooks and Casey Mulligan, right? It's Casey Mulligan.
Carey Mulligan and Christina Hendricks.
Christina Hendricks, right? And also Oscar Isaac, who's like kind of not a known commodity at the time, but he gets all those people to appear for what must be fractions of what they were worth at the time, right? So, you know, that's a huge get. It makes the quality of the movie go way up. Yeah. Also, I think casting Albert Brooks was just like a cool decision. That was
kind of out of nowhere, but kind of awesome. You're also forgetting. Fuck, why am I blanking on his name? Ron Perlman.
Yes, right, Ron Perlman. Yeah. See, Ron Perlman's not like doesn't scan for me as important as he is, because I haven't watched all his good things, but yeah, totally. Yeah. Okay, so all right, so we talked about how that gets him creative autonomy. Now, here's the interesting thing about what he does with that creative autonomy. He, and I think to some degree Gosling was involved in this, whittle the script down to an 81-page script.
It's lean.
I mean, it's real lean, right? 81 pages, that's very small, because again, the script is supposed to be a page a minute, Like, that's what you're supposed to be making here. So this is like an hour and 20-minute movie when they went into production. And then during production, they cut stuff.
So, yeah.
Apparently, they cut dramatically cut lines because Gosling and Refn decided, what if your character never actually talks unless somebody asks them a specific question that he must answer? Otherwise, he doesn't talk. And so because of that, they cut another 20 pages of the script just from that decision. And so they shot basically a 60-page movie.
And the movie's about an hour 40, right? So it's 100 minutes.
Yeah. But it's an hour 40. So that would make you think this is a bad decision, right? Is like, oh, so this thing got really bloated. Like they cut it down, but also it got really bloated in terms of runtime. And my argument is going to be no, it did not, because of the directing things that he did to keep us interested. But I think you and I might disagree there. We will see. I will just say this. So the argument here is, how does a director transcend a bad script? Refn did the thing that you hear every single day in film school, every day, and that you hear, sort of endlessly in your film career, and that is cut dialogue. Cut it. Cut the dialogue, right? Like, we should just cut dialogue. So he did that. And I would argue the film is definitely stronger because of it. Like, do you want to hear more from the driver than you do? Do you want to hear him talk more than he does? What do you think?
To answer the question, no. I don't need to hear any more out of the driver. but
again,
I do
that's
think
incredible, right?
You are right about the cutting dialogue and showing, not telling, and all that stuff, and relying on the actors to play a role that is, you're going to get more bang for your buck by a shot of how someone reacts to something for the audience to understand, oh, this is what's going on, than someone to say, this is what's going on. And that 100%, is smart.
But let's be clear, it does put an onus on the director, right? When you cut dialogue, you're now putting an onus on the director to get a look that's clear, right? The look's got to be clear, and it's got to carry all that information out of the actor. Now, that may sound like, oh, so super easy. Remember, as a director, you got to transmit that information in a way that the actor can understand and manifest, and that is not as easy as you think it is.
No, because everyone's coming
it's
from
a lot
different angles, and
it's a lot easier to put words on a page than it is to manifest behaviors in another person. But that's the talent of directing. So that's so that's essentially the script piece, how he managed the script. All right, so the problem is that cutting it down creates another huge issue for the director, which is now the story is so simple that it's no longer emotionally compelling, right? Like, there's so little to this now in terms of script and plot that it's no longer an emotionally compelling story. And I think if you just took the beats and put them on a piece of paper, like in an outline, you would say, yeah, that's right. This is kind of not much to this movie, right? I mean, isn't that your main critique of it, Abe, ultimately?
Yeah, I would say that would be a part of it. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's a valid critique. I think there isn't a lot of substance to this. And there's some huge problems that are in the story because of that decision. Some of them are character problems with the driver. For instance, why is the driver a criminal at all? Why does he commit crimes at all?
My question is why is he so sad?
Right. Well, is he sad is another question. I mean, like,
why is he so sad?
Why is the driver, period? Why is he? Like, I do think it's fair to be like, we don't really know this character that well. That's true. We don't. We don't even really know what he wants.
No. Not until
like, he's sort
his
of
actions declare it. Which is kind of what you're saying. By cutting dialogue, you don't have the thing where, in Act 1, you usually have a moment where, the protagonist goes like, God damn it, I just don't want this thing to happen anymore. I have to stop it. And then they go about their plan. In this one, he goes about his plan sneakily to us because he's just kind of watching and casing the joint because it's like a heist movie, kind of. And So the first act one is like he's just going about stuff and watching and interacting with Carey Mulligan, and then all of a sudden, it's all happening.
I mean, it's clear that his want, before somebody asks me about this, his want is to be with this woman, right? That's
that
what he
becomes
wants,
very clear pretty quickly.
Yeah. And like, okay, and that is enough for a movie, but like it doesn't explain the previous version of him that was sort of drifting aimlessly through life. It's enough for us to leave the problem alone, and I think enough for most movie goers to be like, I don't care.
Also,
that's fine.
We don't know if his quote unquote turning of the leaf, like in intercut between the Carey Mulligan sequences, where he is hanging out with the kid and stuff like that, we're also seeing that he is now working at the mechanics more. He's getting like a racing career off his, is getting started. We don't know if his turning away from crime is genuine, because he just does these things.
I would argue he doesn't turn away from crime.
I think what, if you were to ask from me, I think this is much like if the original script was someone who is, it's like Heat or something. He has this past where it's full of crime. He's very good, but he gets out. And then
it's all crime filled, crime
and then
riddled.
He's, or Equalizer is another great example. And then he decides for that life is over. I'm going to be good now. And then something happens where he's like, well, I have a set of skills and I can't allow this to happen. So that's like the typical, criminal arc, right? I think they kind of go through the motions of it, but they don't explicitly have the telling of that sequence, I guess that's what I'm pulling from what you're saying, is that he took those all out and still gave you a compelling act 1 and 2.
That's interesting. So you see this movie as sort of like a one last job kind of movie, right? Which is like the cliche of movies of this type.
Adjacent. One Last Job is more of a guy who's a criminal and he wants to get out. This is more of the guy who's already gotten out, but he's pulled back in.
Right. It's Godfather 3. Or it's Carl Reiner's character in Ocean's 11.
Yeah.
Okay. So I guess it does sort of paint broadly those strokes. It doesn't really fill them in. I would argue it's not clear at all whatsoever that this guy is ever going to get out of crime. It's clear he's going to have to lay low. That part's clear. But like, is he no longer a criminal driver? No idea. No idea whatsoever. Now, I think it's fair to say the fact that we can say that should be a death rattle for this movie, right? Like the fact that we don't even know for sure what the decision is that's made by this character, like in a fundamental core emotional way, should normally be like, this movie's bad. That's a bad movie. But in this movie, I think it still works. And why? Because the director has used some techniques to kind of bury those problems and to overcome those problems. So I want to talk a little bit about how does he as a director sort of get us past these problems with his protagonist. So the argument here is effectively that Refn creates a kind of a subtle cognitive dissonance in the audience that makes us feel like more engaged with the film. And by that I mean he makes us look carefully at this protagonist and want to be included. And he intentionally walls us off from the protagonist so that we feel like we're just about to understand him and we never quite do. And it's like he sort of negs us, and it works in this movie. It's rare that works, but this movie it does. So here's how he does it. The first way is that he almost constantly is obscuring Ryan Gosling's face in one way or the other. I don't know how many shots there are of Ryan Gosling sitting somewhere in profile, but it must be billions, right? Like it might be more than there are galaxies.
Yes.
There's just so many shots of him in profile staring at something, and you're like, what's he thinking about, man? Like, you know what I mean? There's just so much of that.
There's so many times that I almost had a bowl of cereal so I could bring the bring the spoon to his mouth. But yeah, it's like the movie for that meme.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. The spoon to his mouth. This is a perfect movie for that. That's right. I forgot about that meme. So I agree with that. And I think there's a strategy to it. And that is that normally for us to identify with a person, we need to look them in the face, like specifically look them in the eyes, right? Like that's it's a human thing where we feel like we know a person better when we see both their eyes and we've connected to them. I think denying us that makes us, rather than sympathize with this guy, it makes us examine him more. It makes us more into sort of detectives, trying to figure out what he's about.
Because we're constantly going like, "What are you? Why are you so sad?"
Yes, I agree. I agree, and I think that works in this movie. It's very rare, and like I sort of infamously at Cracked kept trying to figure out how to shoot profile shots. For my comedy sketches, and they never fucking work.
No, because comedy plays with the face.
In comedy sketches, because you don't laugh at a person when you're not included.
No, that's why narrow eye line. That's why over the shoulders. I shot over the shoulders all the time. It's the most boring shot in the world. But guess what? You ain't thinking about the filmmaking. You're thinking about the funny. So
right, and you could not make this into a comedy as it's shot. Like that would never work.
Right.
It would have to be something totally different.
They're completely different things because you, as a director, you got to make room for whatever the thing the star of it, so to speak. And here you're absolutely right. Like a profile shot gives you multitudes because it's disorienting. And I mean, you're probably going to go into this, so I don't need to do it. But like you're absolutely right.
He's making, it's the same way that we look at statues, right? And just sort of look at him and go, huh.
Yeah.
You know, like think about him. It's like
angle,
that effect,
then
right?
this angle and, soak it in.
So the other advantage that this thing has is that it makes us sympathize more with the people who end up being actual victims in this movie. So Carey Mulligan and Bryan Cranston, we get a little bit more connection to them.
Yes.
And, because we can connect more to them, we start to see this character the way they see him. In fact, there's a whole lot of scenes where we are, like, for instance, cruising around with Ryan Gosling, and we cut to Carey Mulligan, who we get a pretty clear shot of, and she's thinking about him. And so we do the same thing, right? Like it's sort of the director trains us to perceive him the way others perceive him, not the way we perceive him. And I think that's interesting.
Oh, she kills it. She's the best actor in this.
She's very good.
She's the best actor in this movie. Or at least the character is the best. Like, she has the most to do, and she nails it. That's my opinion.
I think she's the easiest to see what she's doing.
Yes.
And like, I think that helps.
She's the clearest.
I go back and forth with Ryan Gosling. Like, just to be clear, he was up for some awards in like various acting circles for this role, which I find a little surprising, but is true. That might be the Ryan Gosling effect more than his performance. I'm not sure. Anyway, so the last thing I want to say about the obscuring the face thing, it makes him more than human. It makes him more than human because, again, we're looking at him like and trying to contemplate who he is, which sort of reinforces this superhero thing where his motives are kind of beyond us and his goodness is sort of inexplicable. Like, why is he good? We don't exactly know. We know, but we also don't totally understand it. Like, we don't have the insight into it, which is pretty commonplace in superhero tropes, specifically people like, not Daredevil, Superman, is the kind of person who's like, what's he really about? Like, we kind of contemplate him more, so there's that. Okay. So the second thing that he does, and this is like, pretty obvious, but I don't want to undersell it. Refn rarely shoots anything at eye level in this movie. Okay, so what I mean by that is he shoots almost everything in this movie from an either way high looking down, a high angle, or he shoots it from a low angle, which is the more commonplace, right? Where he's looking up at him like you're a 5-year.
No, really. Like you're. I didn't think about the superhero angle until you're literally talking about angles.
Yeah. Well, that's what this is, right? Like he's a superhero, and so the low angle shots are a way of sort of reinforcing the potency of this character without having to do anything else. Like he doesn't have to show us any other level of expertise other than the fact that he's good at driving, and we get the sense about him. Oh, this guy can kick your ass.
Oh yeah, that
this
opening
this
sequence,
guy's really badass.
He is so in control of every fucking thing. It's awesome.
Correct. I mean, yeah, so it's a little bit the deadpanness with which he performs it, but the director really supplements it by like constantly shooting way under his eye line. Now, for those of you who are not filmmakers, let's talk just briefly about what that means. So, one of the fundamental dynamics of power in human beings is height. Okay, and like this comes down to childhood, right? When you're a kid, adults tower over you, so you look up at them, right? And they seem powerful. When you, if and when you're like an older sibling or an adult and looking at a kid and you look down at them, they seem like insignificant or less powerful, right? Like you can overpower them. Same with your dog or whatever.
You can eat the little ones.
Right. And it's like it's very biological like that. And there's nothing, that's one of the most primal things about filmmaking that is sort of like underappreciated, height. So the fact that we're always a child looking up at this guy reinforces the fact that he's more than a man and that he is sort of inscrutable. He's above us, and he's certainly more powerful than we are.
It also didn't even occur to me until you started talking about it. A lot of the shots of when he's changing gears are shot from like POV the gear. So he's literally manipulating us with his hand. You know, he's like, okay, your world, I control this world. My hand is like a superhuman huge hand that is like right in front of your face. Yeah, it makes him larger than life. You're absolutely right.
Yep. And I mean, there's other characters that he also empowers this way. Like Albert Brooks in particular gets shot from a lot of low angles. And like the one time that they interact before they get into their fight, like Ryan Gosling's like sort of like 3 or 4 feet below him on like he's like in the bleachers and they have to shake hands, and it's very like shaking hands with God, and it's like so not subtle that you don't think about it. You know what I mean? It's like so obvious that you don't think about it. So, you know, it's, again, power dynamics. That's a very simple tool, but it super works, and Refn is very good at it. Okay, so here is, to me, the most fascinating tactic that he uses to kind of jar us emotionally and to sort of fix the lack of substance. So I would argue in this movie there's basically 2 paces. There is the chase sequence pace, which is pretty cutty. And lots of very intentional pans and stuff, right? Like lots of that, okay? And like reveals and things. And then there's the and he does that for all the chases, right? There's basically 2 or 3 chases, and he does that for all that. And then there's the cruising speed, right? Where we're cruising in the car.
Dude, if you could see me right now, I'm just seriously, I'm like nodding right now. I'm like, this is my shit right now, dude. Go to work.
Yeah, right. So like and essentially the filmmaker sets those up right away. First sequence is Cuddy. We're in a chase sequence, and he gets all the way through that whole chase and gets away with it, and it's great. And then we go right into music montage, right? Which is like under the credits, and it's him cruising the streets in the car, right? And he mostly uses the cruising to sort of give a sense of intimacy and to sort of to address the idea of time passing, right? The best way that he does that is when he's in the car with Irene, right? And that happens very early in this film, right? Like they meet, and then she ends up having to go to the repair shop, and then Bryan Cranston's like, "Why don't you take her home?" Right? And then he's like, "You want to see something?" And then like it's like a good 4 minutes of just cruising around, like cruising in the aqueduct, and that's where we first hear the Real Human Being song. Yeah. You know, and it's like, and it's everything's just vibing, right? So that's basically the 2 paces of this film. Now, what's interesting is he flips them at the end. He flips them. So the first like 1.5, 2 acts of the movie, that's how they're used. And then when the tension really starts to ratchet up, he has the only kiss scene that happens between Irene and the driver, and he uses the quick sort of zooming, light changing, intense language to do it. and he also does it in like, then there's a shootout right there.
What do you think that means?
So, like,
why invert?
I think he inverts it because it maximizes the intensity of their connection. And I think, I mean, you might disagree with that. I think it also suggests that their connection has always been dangerous. Like, it's dangerous, it's always been dangerous, and like it's the cause, it's going to create violence and danger.
Yeah, I think it's he grasps onto, like, he as a character, even though we don't really understand it until maybe this moment, he conquers all forms of like fear, and like he's such a cool customer.
He's so cool.
There's like no more thrill anymore, and that's why he was attached to crime, because the little amounts of thrill, that was like the most that he could actually be motivated. So the fact that we bring that kind of, so the fast cutting and like the more active cinematography implies like a zest for life. So if he is broaching new territory, aka a love, and like he's fallen in love, this is a thrill for him, which is pretty driver centric, but I mean, so is the movie.
I don't have a problem with that. I think that's a totally reasonable read of this, and could also be straight up intended. Like, he could have straight up intended that, because this guy is definitely not expressive the way human beings are at all. So it could be that like this is literally the only way he feels alive. I could see that. I believe that. Now, my real theory here is that is for the opposite use of this trope, right? So not only does he invert the intensity sequence for the kissing, he inverts the cruising stuff for all the murders at the end.
Yeah.
Right? Like, all the murders at the end are very sort of like even-handed, mellow, and they're not super violent.
Yeah, the elevator scene. I think he caresses Carey Mulligan.
Exactly.
And like he pushes her to the side, and then he goes to town on this dude.
Well, and what about like the best killing, I think, is the one with Albert Brooks, and it happens as sort of a shadow dance in this very like poetic way. And it's the opposite of how action movies are normally done. It's like, that's the opposite way.
Right. Yeah.
And I think what it does is it's like Pavlov's dog. We've been trained to feel a kind of sense of significance and intimacy with that way of shooting it, that way of showing an event. And so when we see the deaths at the end sort of captured in that way, we feel like something very significant has happened. Like, we feel emotional significance about it that I don't think it really has, but it fixes the script problem of it being sort of, who cares, right? Like, he fixes that by sort of inverting this language. And that's really fascinating to me, because I can't think of another time I've seen that in a movie. So essentially what he's doing is by training us to feel certain ways with different tactics and inverting them, he's created new significance to all of those emotional experiences that on a script level they probably couldn't have achieved. Right? As he gets more out of it, he extracts more. That's my theory.
Yeah.
So kind of last point on like about the filmmaking, he just really fucking crushes that car stuff. He's just very good. Like the shot selection in the car.
Yeah.
Like, there's all kinds of stuff that's like, that's probably the best I've ever seen a car filmed.
World. It's a whole unique world.
Yeah, and like just very creative. Like the low angle shots. He's got a couple of side by side profiles that I've never seen in a movie before. He's got like pans inside a car that I've never really seen before. Like, it's just. He's done really rad work in the car, and I can't say how important that is in terms of what we feel about the script, but it definitely makes us feel like we're in the hands of somebody who really knows what they're doing.
It's also punctuated by several set pieces, including my favorite, or probably the audience favorite, which is the slow motion Christina Hendricks behind her, the car flipping in slow motion. What a shot. What a fucking shot.
Yeah. That's the whole movie. To me, like, the day that he shot that, he must have laid back and been like, we got it.
Yeah.
Like, that's the movie.
This movie's working.
Because again, you sort of get both things, right? Where you get like the intensity, but you also get the intimacy, because that's an intimate shot of Christina Hendricks.
She's in the middle of freaking the fuck out. Yeah.
Yeah. She has a really interesting role I could do a whole other conversation about that. I don't want to get too because it's really weird and it's short. Anyway, okay. So in conclusion, I think what's happened here is that Refn used some very clever camera techniques to enhance the effect of the script that he chose to create, and in doing so sort of got around the fact that he had cut it down to nearly nothing. But even by cutting it down to nearly nothing, he avoided making a rote studio picture with this and created something that was wholly unique. And that is a successful endeavor for a director. Even if you don't like the movie, I think that it's hard to deny that like he showed a lot of expertise and mastery of the craft to get here with that story.
Yeah.
I think. Beyond that, I think we can argue about whether it's good or not.
No, this is.
But it's one of the rare examples of being better than the script.
You know what's great about this theory is that it reveals something. Like I learned something about myself in it. Which it's just by the way that you compiled it. And what that is I think both times I've seen this film, I've let my presupposition of how I think film ought to work get in the way of me enjoying the film. And I still contend that I'm right, but like you going through the superhero bit, and that's like shit that I get super excited about, and I missed it. Like I didn't even think about it because I was just like, this fucking shit, just get cut to the end. I'm over it. You know, like I just wasn't looking for it because of how the movie like operates and makes me feel. And it also revealed to me. So that's that. But it also reveals to me, I think the biggest difference between you and I as filmmakers, or rather like film enjoyers, film watchers, which is not that it's all spectrum. So it's not that one, it's like on one side you got this, on one side you got this, but it's just like, as you were describing like some of the better parts of the film in this, especially like with the character of the driver, what's so isolating to me about this movie, and I ultimately think that it falls on the shoulders of the director, clarity is super important to me. It's time and time again, it's why I don't love Lynch. I think he makes haunting, amazing imagery, and that's, photographers do that, like he just has a bigger, he has a bigger toolkit. He has music and motion, but he's not saying anything with it that I can infer, because it's so distant.
Interesting.
And that mystique, that kind of wall always feels like a magician's trick to me and puts me off. It's like saying like, I have the sight of something that you're going to have to work for. And I don't think that that's a very human thing. So that's why I think it gets in the way of me understanding and enjoying these types of movies, is because of how distancing, like when there's a few times that you use like the distance is kind of interesting here. I don't find it that interesting, but that's all subjective. So that doesn't get in the way of your theory. I still think you are right about what it is doing. It's just not for me, but yeah, I do like that you found several things that I'm like, I didn't see that before. Because I like to pride myself on, you throw any 30 seconds at me, I'm going to tell you, this is what's happening. This is probably what happened before. This is what's probably happening next. I'm usually pretty good at calling my shot, just watching, film grammar for, since I've been alive. We're all pretty good at that. I totally missed it on this one.
I probably wouldn't have seen it if I wasn't determined to explore why I thought this movie was good. Because like the math part of my brain that adds up like what a movie should be, right? Which is sort of the thing that you often operate out of. For me, that's a little analytical. So like I go to an analytical place when I think about that. And the analytical part of me is, this movie should not be good. So why do I like it? Right. And if I hadn't done that, I probably wouldn't have been able to extract all this for you. I will say that I do like. I think it's more clear now, having watched it like I don't know 4 or 5 times, that it's clearly a superhero movie.
Mm-hmm.
And like in hindsight, it's like, oh, obviously it was a superhero movie. He's been underlining that the whole time.
Listen to the music,
even the stupid ass theme song. Yeah, the theme
lyrics
song
of
tells
all
you that.
It starts with like, you won't change, boy. When he's doing the crime stuff, and then it's a real human being, and then it ends. He's a real hero. You know, like it has it has a coda. You know,
right? In that respect, it's like, oh, this is kind of what I wish a lot of superhero movies would do. You know what I mean? Like just sort of like get a little more abstract and sort of like just get real intimate and do that story. This is a fucking great superhero movie to me. Like I like most superhero movies I think are not good. If this one is much better than not good.
Yeah.
So there's that. But I do think it's fair to say like this is not like Shawshank Redemption or something that has like emotional punch that sticks with you. Like it's not that. Like a good contrast, The Reformation. Did you ever see that movie? The Reformation with Ethan Hawke?
No, I haven't.
It's a great movie. So briefly, it's about a guy who's like he's lost his wife and he's like a minister at some tiny little church with a tiny little congregation, and his life is completely miserable. Also, he's got some health problems that look like they might be cancerous. He's not dealing with them. He lost his daughter. It's just like this whole mess of a life, right? Mm-hmm. He's trying to make a go of it as a pastor. Then one of his congregants, his congregant is like this married couple, and this guy comes to him and is just like, I don't see any point in living anymore given how climate change is. And this guy commits suicide. And so this pastor's left trying to like comfort himself and also this ex-wife, like not ex-wife, but like, you know, widow, with this like in the midst of this climate change stuff. And the more he reads the climate change stuff, the more he gets like sort of radicalized by it. And it's very raw, and it's also an indie film, and it's very small, but it's like it sticks with you whether you agree with it or not, because it has like substance to it. This movie's the opposite of that. There isn't substance to it, but you walk away feeling like I just saw a fucking movie. You know what I mean? Like that's how it feels to me.
I mean,
this is a movie.
Because that's the style thing. There's something you said.
Yeah, but it works.
I totally get it. I totally get it. It's the art of the cool, and it succeeds. I do want to point at the thing you said right before when you're talking about the analysis of film, like through a kind of rote, like clarity machine, you know, as like the kind of, it's interesting you mentioned that, because you kind of are saying that like, that's sometimes what you do, Abe, and you're not wrong.
No, I'm saying I do that. But I think we probably both do that.
I think we both like I said at copy paste what I said at the beginning. It's all spectrum, and we're all like not like one side versus another side. It's just like there's an interaction. So they got the kid, right, who's just, I've never seen a more constantly surprised kid. His eyes are just open all the time, and he's just like looking around and just seeing like what is going on. Like it's kind of funny, but it's just
very cute.
But it's a cute kid. That's
kid.
why, because he's got these huge eyes that are very cute, and like he's the cost. You know, he's the price that like no one will ever allow to be paid. Definitely not the driver. And then you got on the other side of this scene, you have the driver, and they're in the mechanic. They're in the shop, right? And it's when Carey Mulligan, right? And
I know this scene.
You know the scene. I already know the scene. And the driver, and so here's the thing with Ryan Gosling is that there's literally at the end of the movie a long shot that I'm positive is like, is he dead? Is he dead? Because the whole point is that he's so stoic and unblinking throughout this movie that you don't know if he's a dead body or not.
Right.
Like that's kind of a part of it, right?
That's right.
So here's an interesting. So there's this interaction where he's wrenching the car, doing car stuff, and the kid's there, and it like cuts between back and forth. I think it does like 4 times back and forth. And then Gosling blinks and then says, "You blinked." And it's like, here's the problem with the clarity it's as if the director is operating under the understanding that the audience knew that they were playing a staring contest. I did not. It's little things like that make me feel isolated. Like and here's my point. Like the scene is there to build charm and a kind of endearing morality to the driver, correct? But it's not real. It's like a charm computer. He's like, I feel like the director's saying, place bit with child here, cuteness achieved, move along. That's not the analysis that I'm down with. Like, I don't like that. I don't like scenes that are moved together to serve a point. It's that there's a point that needs to be served. The scene perfectly does that. So it's like this top-down, bottom-up kind of analysis.
Right.
And I think you pointed out one of them very specifically, and I just wanted to bring up the other point that this film does have that problem, I think.
Oh yeah. There's a lot of moments where, because they cut dialogue.
Yeah.
Not only that, but that's one of the reasons. Like, you're not exactly sure what to infer from what's going on for long periods of time. But I think the director in this case is sort of not interested in you knowing exactly what it was, but you sort of walking away with a general feeling about it.
And so it's clear. Are you saying that is forgivable, or are you saying that that's likable? Like, you like that?
I'm not saying it's some movies I do like it. Like, for instance, you mentioned David Lynch. Mm-hmm. I really like David Lynch.
Right.
But I do turn off the expectation that I'm gonna understand it.
True.
In a moment-to-moment sense.
That's healthy.
Well, I understand. Right. I get it. It's not healthy because, it's supposed to be a movie. But then also, that David Lynch's movies are what they are. Like, if you're going in there expecting like a 3-act plot and for it to all hang together, and it's not the straight story,
sure. Yeah.
Why the fuck did you go to a David Lynch movie? That's not what he does. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I'm not shaming anybody for that. I'm just saying, look, this is what the man has gotten. Yeah, the man has gotten a blank check to do this. I mean, blank check, put that in quotes. Mm-hmm. He's been given artistic license to do it, I guess. Mm-hmm. And I like it, so I'm okay with that expectation. Mm-hmm. I think that for whatever reason, Refn hit all the right notes for me to relax my narrative watchdog enough to soak in that sweet cool.
That sweet
style,
what I mean? Which it has in spades.
It has more than any movie I can think of that was trying to be like this movie. Mm-hmm. Like, this movie is one of the most effective I've ever seen at cool movie. I'm legit trying to think of another movie that set out to be cool like this and achieved it. The Matrix. Can you think of another one that is like this? Most of the time they feel pretentious, right? Most of the time they end up being fucking what's that horrible hacker movie with Halle Berry and Hugh Jackman?
Swordfish.
Yes, right. Swordfish is to me the epitome of people trying to make a cool movie, and it's like, I don't know. That's mm-hmm. what most cool movies are. But Drive is so much more successful at it than that.
I guess when I think of a cool movie, I think of Dave.
Dave, the is that the American President movie? Is that what you're talking about?
I think of Dave.
Get out of here! Get the fuck out of here!
Dude, that's so cool. He rides a bike and everything.
I know you're doing. You're no button to spin. I like it.
I have a real question for you.
Okay, I'm ready.
Did you know that David Lynch has a YouTube channel that he posts daily to?
I am aware. Yes, but I'm the one who has his albums. Have I ever played Crazy Clown Time for you?
What a perfect detail about you.
Yeah, I mean, right.
No.
I can't say, when I say I like his movies, I mean I like about 5 of his movies. I don't like everything he's ever made.
Do you know what he posts?
Is it like news reports and shit?
No,
what does he do?
He does 2 videos every day, and has for about...
How many of them are meditation videos?
None.
What percent of them?
I don't know.
Wow,
I didn't
really?
look far. I just looked at the reoccurring ones. He probably has meditation videos, but he does 2 daily videos. And one is he talks about the weather. by looking, he's usually in his basement, which is improbable because like why would you do a news report or a weather report in your basement? Because he's got these tiny windows, like he's got one of those recessed, like the basement has windows but it's at like the ground floor, but he's looking up and he's saying like it's windy, and stuff like that.
It's real windy out there.
Windy out there, and
out there in the city of angels.
But we're gonna get later in the day a lot of sunshine, and he does that. The other video he does is he has a jar. He has a jar with like ping pong balls that he has written, or he's had someone write the numbers 1 through 10 on.
Oh my god!
And then
is this real?
This is for real. And
holy shit!
He puts his hand in there and he said, and he introduced it and he's like, all right, and today's number is, and he pulls it out and he says it's 7. Or it's 9, or it's 10. He's been doing this for 80 days, right? As of this recording of this podcast, He's done it for 80 days.
What does it mean? Anybody know?
Here's my favorite part. I'm not even done yet. My favorite part is that someone, so I'm going to these YouTube, and so I'm like, who are the maniacs watching this? So I scroll down and I see what the comments are. And I laser focus onto the top comment because it's absolutely the only comment that matters. And it's one person every day. And I checked, he's done it since the beginning. Every day says the list of the numbers that he's chosen since the beginning, the spread, the average, which I don't know why that would be a valuable stat, but like if you were to average them and like the mean score,
this is unbelievable.
He puts like the variance and like okay, we've gotten 9 10s and we've gotten 4 4s. And then he says a few nice words about David at the end. Without fail, every day. It's like within minutes he responds.
Okay, I'm sorry. I do need some clarity. Mm-hmm. So here we go.
Yeah.
First question is, do we know what the limit on those numbers are? Is it like 1 to 20? Is it like any number is possible?
The limit on the numbers he pulls out of the jar?
Yeah, like do we know that it's a range of numbers?
1 to 10.
Okay, so it is always 1 to 10.
And
he
always says today's number is blank.
Nobody knows what it's about, right? Nobody. He's never said anywhere.
He doesn't
what
say
this number,
if it's an elaborate like this will reveal a treasure or anything like that. No, he's just pulling numbers out of a jar, dude.
God, I see now. David Lynch is a person who his films don't fit into this podcast scope because every time he makes a film, they're basically up for awards of some kind or the other.
Sure.
So it doesn't fit. But holy shit, could we have a time talking about Straight Story or about
man. We're gonna here's the thing is that podcast is the same every fucking time because we're just never gonna agree about it. I'm just gonna be make fun of
you think
Lynch
it sucks.
for being Lynch because it's not that I don't admire that Lynch is Lynch. I'm not like a Lynch hater. I want to be very clear. I do not dislike Lynch. I just don't understand him, and that makes me scared. I don't know. It doesn't make me want to watch his movies. That's for sure. I don't know. And maybe this is
you're the person who get the genuine scare out of those fucking bunny masks and shit from Inland Empire.
Not at all. Well, David Lynch, if you were to wear a David Lynch mask, I would definitely run for the hills. But
David Lynch is effectively a Midwesterner who's just been just poisoned with sorrow, right?
Yeah.
He's just poisoned with sorrow and set loose on the streets of Los Angeles.
And the result is impossible. That's what's fascinating. He's an impossible human, and we all need to watch because God love him. Keep doing your thing. I would never change a thing about David Lynch.
No, how
but
could
I'm
you?
not gonna write a thesis on him. So I would in this podcast that is not gonna happen, or maybe will happen. I don't know. I will be very clear that I will have only one unwavering opinion, and it won't be interesting. It will just be like, this is weird. Why are we doing this?
I mean, so I would if we were gonna ever do a podcast about David Lynch, it would be Mulholland Drive. Because that's one of his only weird movies that I think you could make a case hangs together.
I love the shit out of Twin Peaks, but it's because he's working in a format. TV format, so he has to answer stuff and be clear.
But he doesn't really.
That's when you rein him in. That's why, like Elephant Man, these are the films that he probably will never be remembered for because there's someone who can just do it better, and it's just not Lynchian. But this is when I think he's at his best because I'm like, oh, fantastic, I can understand.
There's some people in the world who are just sort of given permission to be one eccentricity for their entire life. Like, not to make this completely political, but I would argue President Trump has basically been that, right? Like, he's been allowed to be one eccentricity his whole life, and it's gone this way.
Right.
David Lynch has been allowed to be the scatterbrained, horrific artist his whole life. And, like, so when you talk about all that stuff that he's doing, it's like, yeah, man, have you ever seen an interview with him about his movies?
Yeah, of course. I have to watch every single one.
They're constantly cut together because you can't get a coherent thought out of the guy.
Yeah, I love it. I love it.
I do too. I also really like it. I don't know why. Like, I'm not sure if it's like it's groupthink or whatever, but like I'm into his fucking weird ass thing. And maybe this goes back to what you were saying of sort of like I am a little bit more willing to give license to an interesting artist. Even if clarity's not there, because I've also watched like 4 or 5 Refn films. None of them were as good as Bronson, including Drive.
Interesting.
Drive was closer to Bronson, and then they've all been much less good, I would argue.
Okay.
But I still kind of think he has something to say. Like, I still think he could make a movie one day that's like, oh my God, right? Like a Lars von Trier kind of movie, I could totally see that happening.
Oh, yeah, I bet. I mean... Yeah,
I don't know if it will.
It's just,
I don't know if it will.
Right, it's got to be the right story that he just laser focuses onto the right thing. Yeah,
like he shouldn't make pop movies. Like, I think Drive is as poppy as he's ever going to get. I don't think he's ever going to get more poppy
because
than
it's
that.
his version of an action movie, which is
like fucking
as
awesome,
pulp as it gets, right?
But like, admit this to me. Wouldn't you rather watch this movie than most action movies?
That is a good question. Most action movies.
There's definitely better action movies. I'm not saying it's the best thing ever made.
Yeah.
But it's better than most action movies.
Most
it's also
action
better than
movies
most
in like the
superhero
90s?
movies.
I would say no. I'd rather watch a 90s.
Yeah, that was the golden era, though.
Yeah.
That was the golden era of
most action movies, like even middle of the pack 90s, but most action movies now
like Con Air
are like pretty like, okay. But yeah, because there's something that's hard for me, which is, okay, for example, in Drive, 42 minutes in, we see a bloody Oscar Isaac, which implies a darker plot that's happening. And up to that point, there's been very little. We haven't seen any main character conflict. About 50 minutes in, the driver steals a car in order to help Standard, aka Oscar Isaac, rob banks. So he only makes an action, which is how the movie telegraphs to us, oh, he's got a plan. 50 minutes into the movie. That's less than 10 minutes shy of the midpoint. So even by its own standards, that's why I said it up early. Like, it's clear that they rooted out sequences from the movie in order to build time for the style, because they, like, that Act 1 typical, action movie thing. I must stop this man. There's a statement. There's usually, we get into the thinking of the conflict, the inner conflict, and the decision-making process of the main character. Since we cut that all out, you 50 minutes in and you still don't necessarily know what your driver is doing. But then, the last 50 minutes of the movie fucking rules, because that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I like, wait, and here we go. It's just like, that's a weird form to me. So when you ask me, like, would you prefer to watch? I was like, well, the last 50 minutes, fuck yeah, this movie fucking rips. But
the first 50, no.
Is that worth the price of admission? I don't know.
Yeah, they don't really have anything between the first chase sequence and all the way till convict husband gets home. Like, nothing happens that's tension driving, right? No. At all?
It's all
there's
just
no chase
getting
stuff.
to meet Carey Mulligan, getting his life back on track, That's what I think is happening in the 40 minutes of the movie, and after the opening sequence where, he's driving.
I mean, what's interesting about it is, like, I would argue that, how do I describe this? So, like, the first act is over once he starts the relationship with Carey Mulligan, right? Like once the relationship starts, that's when we're on a like. Basically,
I think I would
the
say
movie's
that would be the bridged new
you want to
act one.
You want to see something, right? As soon as he says you want to see something, we're in the the second act, right?
Yeah, I'd say
so. We're in the second act, and then like normally in most movies, Oscar Isaac showing up would be the midpoint, but it's not in this movie. This movie, the midpoint is he's dead, and they have to, and now he's on the run.
Yeah.
Right. He wants to help out the husband to help out this woman, and now he's on the run.
Yeah.
Right. And so the last half of the movie is like him doing what he needs to do to like keep her safe and also like end this vengeance quest that he's been a part of.
It also creates like, just once again to put on the structuralist hat, it feels like it creates a lot of the signposting that happens, and I guess that's a word sometimes filmmakers, I don't know if the signposting is that a term that people have heard. I don't know, but
you can define it.
Signposting is like when you are clearly signaling at every turn, like over clarifying what's occurring with the story. And it's in movies, it's done by words and actions either. And with like the Albert Brooks character, him signposting how much he's like, I gonna kill this guy, I'm gonna kill people, and Ron Perlman being like, you just come in, driver, because we gotta murder you.
He's worse. Yeah, I think he's worse about that than Albert Brooks is.
Right,
but yeah.
He is. But all the signposting that kind of happens, because I think they wanted to make overtly clear villains because their protagonist wasn't. So don't you feel like scenes where Bryan Cranston dies, like it's a foregone conclusion?
Yeah. It's
like,
very fatalistic.
why have that scene? Why not just have him arrive at the shop and he's dead? You know, like he's gonna come at all of the people. We don't need to see the scene with Bryan Cranston where he's like, hey, I'm leaving. I heard that he might be going to Belize or Mexico or something. And, like, there's this whole interaction. And it's just like, why?
I think my argument for that would be, you're right in terms of, like, again, the logic says you don't need that scene. Mm-hmm. But first thing it does is it makes that straight razor into a thing.
Yeah,
right,
which is just like cool because he has this velvet box. Right. It's an excuse 100%. To make Albert Brooks like a killer of some note.
Totally agree.
And I don't
and the way he does
that's cool. That's not cool. He's like
the way that he does that is very memorable. It's like that's it. Like that's it. Right, when he kills it, like that's interesting. Yeah. But the other thing is, Bryan Cranston's one of the only people in the movie. Like Carey Mulligan and Bryan Cranston, and to some degree Oscar Isaac, are basically the only people in the movie. Right. Everyone else is like an archetype.
Yeah.
So you can't not kill him, right?
I'd say you kill him. You do the promise. Your characters are, monsters. They're villains. So he should die. I just don't need to see that scene because, like I said, all the signposting, all the over clarification that they have to do in the second half of the movie makes it okay. Oh, we have a scene where Bryan Cranston dies. Is like basically as soon as I saw a shot of Bryan Cranston, I was like, I bet someone's here. And I bet Bryan Cranston's gonna die.
Well, so again, I think both you and I have the challenge in front of us for basically the rest of our lives. Like, whenever we watch a movie, we have to ask, when I know this, does everyone know it? Because, I'm not sure that we always have that instinct about what the audience
put in the comments
anticipates. Fair enough. So there's that, right? But the second thing is that, like, I think part of the reason it feels like a signpost is that there's so little other melodrama with dialogue and stuff in the movie at all that it really sticks out as being movie-ish compared to the rest of it. So, like, I don't know how much it's like a point, look at this, right? It's not like, this movie's not lost in translation, right? Where, like, every single beat of it is sort of this muted thing that's never stated. That's, like, it's a caper movie. Ultimately.
Yes.
So it does feel like signposting when they do clear dialogue-driven beats. I don't know if that's a cinematic sin. So I don't know if CinemaSin should get a hold of this. You know what I mean?
Fair enough. I just
I mean,
think that
it's just a debate.
Albert
it's a
Brooks
debate.
putting a razor in a velvet box with his other weird knives
Yeah,
he presumably
that was
kills
stupid.
people with. That's,
Yeah.
I mean, I know what you're doing. You're putting scorpions on jackets, but
Right.
I don't know if I don't know if Albert Brooks is the cool Scarface that you want him to be.
But I do think that was kind of a creative choice to
Yeah, I
make
do.
somebody who's
It's obvious.
not that.
Yeah, they're like, let's get Simpsons Albert Brooks.
Right, but like he did fill the part. Like he did fill it. It wasn't like he was like Steve Buscemi, who's like definitely not the guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's not an undercast. It was like more
It's,
just sort of a creative cast.
It's like adjacent, and that adjacent shit, I get that. It's also why I don't like mumblecore, because it's like you're not even doing the antithesis. You're doing like some weird like riff that I don't understand.
Right, you're playing the tropes, but sort of doing it in this half-ass way
Yeah, you're
because
going
you
over
assume we know.
here because I didn't expect that, and I'm like, I don't give you points for doing shit that I don't expect. Like, I don't expect you to like come to my house and murder me. That doesn't make it a good impulse.
Right. Yeah, I don't expect you to make my finger twist it around and like beckon at me. I don't expect that.
I don't
You
expect. You could though.
You could do it.
But I mean,
you know?
that's why movies. That's why we love movies, because
That's
we can.
why movies.
That's why movies, guys. I don't know. This is such a subjective film, because as you started it, you talked about like how hard it is to make a movie, and this guy clearly has an understanding of what the star of his movie is. And by star, I don't necessarily mean Ryan Gosling, although that's true.
Although, yes,
the star is the style, it's the cinematography, it's the way in which the editorial approach and the directorial stance that this guy takes in accomplishing this movie, and it's done unilaterally and beautifully in a fashion, and that beauty is entirely upon the eye of the beholder. Sometimes people like the beauty of movies because it's like a great chess game. Other times people love it because the color palette makes you feel exactly what you feel at home in the movie. And I think that that's the beauty about movies, is that no one's right, no one's wrong. They just are stories. So
agreed. And
I think
it resonates or it doesn't. It speaks to you or it doesn't.
Well investigated, my friend.
Thank you, my friend. It's always I enjoyed this conversation much more than the one that we overheard while we were watching Drive for the first time. If those people are listening to this podcast, we didn't forget. We did not forget what you did.
But we love you.
We did
though.
not forget.
We do love you.
We do love you. We love you very much.
All right. Let's do another episode, which will probably come up before this one. I don't know why I'm saying these things. This doesn't matter to people, but
I think it does.
Peeking behind the curtain. We're gonna record another episode right now.
Ooh, yay!
Thanks, man.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This has been a Small Beans endeavor. We're a bunch of pals who make podcasts, sketches, music, web series, and movies. The Beans always have new ideas percolating, so make sure to check us out at patreon.com/smallbeans. That's patreon.com/smallbeans, where you can browse all of our current and past content, see what we've got planned in the future, and learn how your support can help the small beans grow into huge, giant monster beans. If you enjoyed this content module, please like, rate, subscribe, or tell a friend about us. We love you!